What's the deal, y'all? It's Cam, and thank you for joining Free Our People to list backwards, because people are free. I'm not here to force your mind, but I'm here to free it. I'm here to open your mind to rethinking what you were taught your entire life and what we commonly accept and don't truly think about. In today's talk, we're going to be discussing spirituality and what that truly is and what it looks like. Let's get straight into it. In layman's terms, or simplest terms, spirituality is the betterment of oneself. It's the betterment of oneself in order to not only help and love yourself and to increase and better oneself, but also to love, increase, and better the selves of others and to help other people grow as well. If you think of it, nowadays, the term spirituality has been complex, complicated. It's become just unnecessarily added to a lot, and then most of the things that are added to what spirituality is, or those schemas we were talking about last week, the characteristics that we associate with spirituality, most of the time aren't spiritual. So we'll get into the more in-depth meaning of that as well. But one point I want to bring up is Occam's razor. This is a critical thinking term and is basically used to describe what I just said. In most cases, you can determine what is true information and what is false information based on how complex it is. Usually when you tell a lie, or someone is telling a lie because they have a bunch of extra things in there that almost seem unreal, or they seem, like an exaggerated truth. Like there's just too many things in here that are exaggerated. So one of the most simplest ones is, I guess you could say, the belief in Santa Claus. Occam's razor would say, okay, choosing between two truths. On one hand, you have the idea or the truth that there's this big fat man that comes down your chimney and gives you presents, or Occam's razor, the more simple truth, which is the truth, that your parents give you those gifts. They don't travel down the chimney to do so. They don't just have these magic reindeer or this magic bag or list that knows what you want. They simply asked you, probably heard a couple things from your friends or family members, and went to the store and got it. That's the more simple answer, and it also happens to be the truth. So that's one way that we can determine real information from fake information. Just take that extra second or that extra moment to analyze and think deeper. Like, is this extra? Is there a lot of extra information here, a lot of unnecessary information here? And then a lot of the times, if you think about all the extra details that are in something, they're not really consistent, meaning they all don't really connect. They all have different truths or different ways that they're true within them, and so on. So when it comes to spirituality, you can always think of that as the most simplest answer, or the truth. That spirituality, keyword spirit, is all about bettering your spirit and becoming a better spirit so that you can then help others in their spirits, and then they can be better spirits and help others, and it's a domino effect. So how can you tell when somebody's spiritual or trying to better themselves? Well, usually someone that's spiritual or trying to better themselves has those type of traits. They're normally kind, they're charismatic, they know how to speak to people, they have emotional intelligence. So not only do they know how to speak to people, just because nowadays a lot of people have that slick or that charm where they can just talk, but they also hold that action behind it. They have integrity. These people are accountable. They have accountability. They are aware that they aren't perfect. They are aware that they make mistakes and they may cause harm to others. But the difference between someone that is spiritual and not is that they will try to change that. They will work on that. There is nobody on this earth who hasn't hurt someone, but it's the intention behind it. If it was truly unintentional, then you should and wouldn't have a problem admitting, hey, I made this mistake. It wasn't my intention to hurt you, and so on. It only becomes your character or a pattern when you refuse to admit that you're wrong. You refuse to admit that mistake, because how can you grow from a mistake you claim you never made? Stay woke. But, so signs and traits of a spiritual person you could think of as a good person, because they have that emotional intelligence. They understand and they're aware how they affect others or how others may affect them. They're kind, they're generous. These people aren't selfish, they're not gossiping, they're not always gossiping about people. They're quite literally working on their spirit. They're honest, they're The traits that go with someone bettering their spirit. Oftentimes, people associate spirituality with physical or material things. So, once again, focused on the appearance and how they look and not their spirit. We say someone's spiritual automatically because they have a bunch of crystals on their neck, or because they wear turbans or hijabs, or they have a bunch of like rock necklaces on, or pearls on, or they have a lot of rings on. Or we see that person has an ankh or have an ankh thing, and we just automatically assume, oh yeah, that person's deeply spiritual, they're in the spirit. That's not the case, and that's not true. And that's honestly, like I said with my last video, what they are using to pervert and basically be the opposite of spiritual. When you're using objects, when you're going out your way to buy tarot cards, to buy crystals, to buy books, buy spells, these things, how are you healing or bettering yourself in a holistic way, in a way that's natural, in a way that's true to you, that you actually are doing the inner work? You can't be doing any type of inner work when you went out and bought that thing that so-called increased your spirituality or increased your awareness. Or with the crystals, or in spells, you're literally bending time and the free will and the destinies of other people just so you can get what you want in that moment. That's not for the betterment of even yourself or others, because even with yourself, we think that we know what's best for us, but ultimately we're humans, we're prone to error. We base things off what we want, what we see in the moment, and most of the time those are temporary. Have you ever thought you wanted something as far as like a clothing or shoes, and then later down the line, it might not even have to be years later, just a few months later, you're like, oh, that's ugly, what was I thinking? Same with people that we talk to or date. So it goes the same thing with the spirituality and the things that we want. Well, we might think we want that job, or we want that money, or we want that person that I love, so we go as far as to get tarots done, readings done, or we buy these crystals to quote unquote protect us from these people or things, or to just automatically give it to us. But Occam's razor, realistically, how could something just be given to you without any repercussions? How can you seriously just alter the mind and heart of someone else because that's what you want, and then it's actually going to work and it's actually going to be healthy and for the betterment of you both? It's not. If you think about it, if you watch Rick and Morty, there was this episode with the devil, and he had a shop where he was exchanging and giving people these objects. It started off with Rick's granddaughter, but that's who he tricked first. And every object they bought from his store it gave them something. So it said, like, for instance, you could be like, no woman would ever reject you. But then it also didn't say that, I don't know, it just have some type of tricky or eerie thing to it. The whole time, no woman will ever reject you, but you also probably will never have friends, or you have one big monstrous big toe. Like, it was just some curse added to whatever blessing or whatever gift that they wanted. And that's how the devil works. It'll give you what you think you want, but behind it, there's always something disastrous, always something that'll set you even further back than what you originally started. So with that, just because you do crystals or magic or any of those things, it does not make you spiritual. And in fact, like I said, I will argue it makes you the opposite, because you're doing things to purposely bend the wheel and gain what you want out of any situation or thing without actually thinking about the future consequences, or if that's what that other person really wants, or if you're actually even ready for what you're asking for, such as money or love or any of those things, and you're not actually doing the work. So all of it ultimately is for selfish gain, or to aid to just you and not yourself, not your inner self, not your spirit, or not anyone else's spirit. So also, when you are putting faith in these objects or these things or these material things, you're saying, and you're also, you're showing that you're putting faith in man and objects above God. If you believe in God, you're putting all of these things above the faith in God, and that's why it's displeasing to God, because you're not putting faith in God anymore. You're not saying, okay, God, I trust you with this. Okay, God, I trust when it's time in this preparedness that I'll be ready, or this will come. You're instead saying, no, I'm getting this now. This is how I'm going to get it. I'm going out of my way to pay for it just to get it. Not really spiritual. A lot of times people will also argue that they're gods or goddesses. And the big thing about that is that when you say you're a god or goddess, being a god is omnipresent. Being omnipresent means that you're able to proceed between time and space. We are humans. We cannot do that. We can't even normally think ahead of ourselves for what we want. You see a lot of people go straight to the drive-thru and don't even know what they want. Or they wake up in the morning and don't know what to do. So how on earth could you know or possibly have that type of knowledge or being or essence where you're all knowing or you're all seeing? You're not. You're a human. And that's also another thing. Gods or goddesses are spirits and deities. So a human cannot be a deity because a human is flesh. We still feel, we still have pain, we still encounter emotions. These are things that a god does not do. And then if you also want to go deeper into that, if you believe that we are all gods and goddesses, not only is that a polytheistic mindset, meaning you believe that there are more than one gods and goddesses, because how can you be a god and then God be the god? Occam's razor, it doesn't make sense. That would mean if I'm a god and I believe in God, that means I'm polytheistic. That means I believe that there are more than one God. But if you are monotheistic, meaning you believe there is only one God, then it's probably not wise or it's inconsistent in logic to say that someone else or a human is a god or that there are even other gods and goddesses, because even if someone says they're not a goddess, they say there are other gods and goddesses, such as, if you ever heard of Horus, or you ever heard of Ra, or you ever heard of Bastia, all these different goddesses, they're not gods or goddesses. They're fallen angels. They followed Lucifer and Lucifer's teachings of being your own God, of doing as you want, free will, do as thy will. And they followed him in these teachings. They started to believe it, started to act that way and behave that way, and were kicked out of heaven. Those are fallen angels. Nothing about those people, like I said, are gods or goddesses. They're not omnipresent. They're not all-knowing. And most of the time, they can't proceed outside of time and space. So these are just things to think about. As well as if we all were gods and goddesses, think about it. There are 7 billion people in this world and on this earth. So that would mean that since we're all gods and goddesses, 7 billion people can choose to speak whatever they want into the world. So let's say me as a goddess, I want the world to be raining hot dogs and hamburgers. But then Josh, the other god over there, he wants it to be raining pickles and chips. So now you have chaos. It would just be worldly chaos and disaster everywhere, because now the needs and wants of everybody, and since we're all gods, we can manifest it and make it happen. It's all just willy-nilly chaos. We're all just manifesting what we want or what we're thinking into the world without any type of control, because we're omnipresent like that. We have the power like that. So once again, Occam's razor, it just wouldn't be possible. It's just not true. And there would be so much chaos and havoc in the world if that were the case, because everybody has different wishes. Everybody has different things. Imagine if serial killers were considered gods. How many people would just drop dead, or how many genocides would happen? Just things to think about. Back into kind of relation what I was saying with the Rick and Morty episode, how these things will give you what you think you want in the moment, but there's also a lot of dangers or consequences behind it. If you think about the evil eye, Occam's razor, they say the evil eye is supposed to protect you, or it's supposed to, keep you out of evil or trouble or someone who's wishing harm against you. But how does it do that? How does it protect you? By giving it back to that other person. Once again, spirituality. How are you helping your spirit or someone else's spirit by just doing the things that they had planned to do to you? Basically becoming what hurt you. You know how they say hurt people hurt people? It's mainly toxic people that hurt people, because if you truly don't want someone to go through these type of things, or you don't want to cause harm, or you're a good person, then you probably let God handle that, or life handle that, or karma, whatever you believe in, instead of trying to get that justice yourself. Like I said, spirituality is the betterment of one's spirit. If you're, and then the evil eye itself is called evil, an evil eye. We have to wake up. We have to start critically thinking and analyzing the things that we just so willy-nilly, entertain, or that we consume, or that we even practice, before we actually practice it and do it. Just to recap, y'all, spirituality is all about bettering your spirit and helping others better theirs. So if you're at any point doing things that is just for selfish gain, to bend the will in the natural way of the world, or you're going out your way to protect yourself, but in that protection you're hurting someone else, it's not spiritual. Spirituality is about being honest, being accountable, having emotional intelligence, having a progressive mindset, a positive mindset, outlook on life, being trustworthy, being reliable. Like I said, and all of these things are able to, you're able to get these things. It just takes practice. It takes work. And like I said, it takes that accountability and that realness with yourself and others to get to that place. Because how can you grow from a mistake you never made? So that's all for today, guys. If you like, make sure you like, comment, share, subscribe, comment things you want to hear about, you're scared to talk about, you want to see me talk about, or you don't know about. And like always, y'all, stay blessed.